It is an absolute honor to be speaking with you. I'm not sure how much of the background of this group that has put this together but we are big Superman fans.
Oh, yay.
Uh, and I actually I met you a few years ago at the Superman celebration in Metropolis, Illinois. It was
Oh, in
an absolute.
Metropolis. That was one of my favorite places.
It is basically my favorite place. I live in Boston and I fly to the celebration in Illinois every year because I'm the biggest Superman fan in the world. And a lot of that is because of Lois and Clark. When I was younger, I remember the night that show debuted in 1993, and that Sunday night, it was a very exciting moment for me in my life. So,
Me too. Me too.
yeah, and your performance as Ma Kent sticks with me as just one of the all-time greats, and it's a role that's been played by wonderful actors over the decades, right? But when I think about Ma Kent and I'm reading comics, I have comics here. Like I that your voice is what I hear for this character.
Well,
So thank you so much.
we're both so lucky that Deborah Joy Levine wrote it that way.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever written Ma Kent in such a terrific way and given her more than here's the phone to do. And so it was just the best fun ever to do that and to portray Ma Kent. And originally, I believe this is true. It's a long time ago, but I think, could this be true? That's the thing. I'm thinking maybe we were just supposed to be in the pilot. And then when they started playing clips of it around to the people in the provinces, it was so popular. Our couple was so popular that then they added us as regulars to the show, which was really thrilling for both of us.
Yeah, and it gave Clark and Superman someone to talk to, and your relationship always felt so real. And your performance just I like latched on and really I still watch the show regularly, right? I have
Oh,
the
yeah,
Blu-ray just
good
came
for
out
that.
recently. I've got the Blu-ray on the shelf, so definitely a big fan. So
Thank you.
well, doing that show, it was for 4 years. You were on sometime, on and off. Like, how did you get like, at the beginning of every season, you're like, hey, you're going to be doing these many episodes, or they call you up and be like, hey, we need you this week.
No, I think we had a deal that we did 10 or 13.
Okay.
When they came back and said, we want you to be regular parts of the show. But what happened ultimately was that we were wonderful for the first 2 seasons. And then in the 3rd season, Deborah Joy left, and she was the beating heart of the show and cared for all the characters. As I understand it, she and the network were always at cross purposes because she wanted to write all these rich characters and they wanted stunt casting and action. And they didn't really care anything about us. And so Joy left, then I think the writers would just write some lines and say, here, Eddie, and here, Kay, and they didn't really write anything from our character's POV. And the other thing that happened at either the beginning of the 3rd season or during the 2nd season is we had a big earthquake out here, and it destroyed our Smallville home, which they never wanted to talk about. And so from then on, we always saw Clark, in town. We never saw him back at our place because our place wasn't there.
Did not know that. That was
Yeah.
fascinating. Wow. So we got some questions in the chat here.
Okay.
Kristen is asking, do you have any fun experiences working with Bob Newhart?
Oh, golly. Yes, I was lucky because I was in, I don't know whether I was in 2 different Newharts. I think maybe I was in one iteration of Newhart and then the other one, and then a couple of them. And all I really remember was that if I was still relatively green in the business relative to how many years I've been in the business now. And so I would get a note sometimes, and I guess it was that I didn't deliver a joke correctly or whatever, but I
Yeah.
just a note that was from Bob that would say, do such and such. And that's really all. I mean, I don't think I ever really interacted with him very much. But anytime he wants to tell me how to do something, I'm really happy to hear about it. He knows a lot more than I do.
Yeah. So going back in that direction, so you're talking about you were early in your career. Do you have a moment when you knew like you wanted to be an actor? What was the journey like going from it being a passion or something you were interested in to being, oh, I can actually make a living. This is my career now. I can do this.
Well, first of all, my first appearance on stage was as the baby Jesus in a school play. My brother and sister were in the school, and I'm born in January, so it must have been the next Christmas. I must have been almost a year. And so that was my first appearance on stage, but I don't remember ever not planning on being an actor. I mean, that was just, I grew up on Betty Grable movies, and my idea of show business, you never saw a Betty Grable movie, I'm sure. But in a lot of Betty Grable movies, she was an actor or a singer or whatever, and you would see her going on auditions and so forth. So I had in my mind an idea about how maybe you got a job, which has a lot to do with it. But I mean, my idea of show business from those movies was not exactly what it's like. It was a lot more fun in that, and there was never any not working for long periods of time. But I always planned on being an actor. I don't ever remember not planning on it, and it just never occurred to me that that wouldn't happen. I just kind of moved forward. I never talked to anybody about the fact that I planned on being an actor. And many years after I was an actor, I was talking to my brother about it, and he said, "Oh, we always knew that was what you were going to do." I mean, I was putting on plays in my backyard, when I was like 7 and 8 years old. So I was a plan.
It was just part of you and part of your life, and it was never
Well,
going to
yeah,
be any
and
other
you're
way.
in school plays, and I would read everything. I would read a lot of showbiz biographies. And when I was back in Dallas, which is where I'm from, and when I was in high school, I wrote fan letters to a lot. I saw a lot of MGM movies, so I wrote 3 different letters. I can't remember. I only know one was 2 that I can remember, but they all wrote me back. But the one that I remember is Marge Champion. Marge and Gary Champion were song and dance people from MGM movies, and they both later became important directors. And they were handwritten letters. They all wrote me back, and they all kind of said the same thing. That because I wrote them and I said, I want to be an actor, but I have no idea how you go about doing it. Everybody thinks you could act, write, or direct. You just could do that. How would you get a job doing that? And so she wrote back. They all wrote back, and they said the same thing. You should do everything you can do in your own hometown, sing at the Lions Club, do book clubs, whatever you can do so that you get up in front of people. And I was always very entrepreneurial. And so you really got to be entrepreneurial if you're in the business, because you got it. And you have to have a very thick skin. And I believe you should come from a background of real or imagined rejection, which allows you to deal with what it's like. You don't like it, but you know how to do it. And so anyway, I did all those things, and then I studied in college, and and then just kept taking one step after another. And in Dallas, in those days, and still, they did a lot of commercials. It was not a union town, but I would call advertising agencies and ask to cast for them, and I learned how to do all of that. And I worked at the Dallas County Fair, at the Dallas State Fair, Texas State Fair in October, standing beside the new cars, getting every kind of job, where you're up in front of people, working conventions and things like that.
Amazing. And also you've been a writer. You've written several books. Do you find that very different than, as a creative endeavor, different than acting? It's a little bit more solitary.
Well, before I left Texas, I taught high school at the Catholic girls' school that I had gone to. I really loved teaching. That was one of the best periods of my life. And I really consider the books, since the books are how-to books, how to make it in the business as an actor, writer, or director, how to get jobs, what the next steps are. And I actually just kind of considered that another version of teaching. It's funny. Last year, what was it? Oh, when I was on Poker Face a couple of years ago, the part that I was supposed to play was described in the parentheses as a busybody. And so I told the writer when I got on set, I said, a busybody doesn't think they're a busybody. They just think people. And I realized that I'm a real busybody because I'm always like, oh, but you could go over here and it would be a better way. So I love those books, and I love that there are people. I mean, I started writing those books in like 1998, maybe, or 80s. I can't even remember, so long ago, and wrote various new editions of them over the years. And people come up to me all the time and say, oh, I had your book when I first got in the business. That's how I got my first agent. And it just always makes me so happy. It makes me so happy to meet people that I've been helpful to.
And anything more in the works? Anything that you're kind of currently cooking?
For writing or acting? For writing or for acting that I'm cooking?
Either, but we're talking writing. Let's talk writing first.
Okay. I haven't done a new edition. About 3 or 4 years ago, I did a new edition of my favorite book, which is How to Sell Yourself as an Actor, which is really kind of like what it's like to be in the business and don't kill yourself because tomorrow your ship could come in and things like that. I did a new edition of that. And then 4 or 5 years ago, I did new editions of the New York Agent book and the LA Agent book. But I don't have any plans right now to do any more of those books. I also wrote a party book back when I was doing books. And I have a memoir that I have in the drawer that I, every once in a while, try and decide whether I want to go forward with it or not. It's already finished. My friend read a book and she said, she read this book, How to Write a Novel in 30 Days. And so if you write 2,000 words a day for 30 days, at the end of that time, you'll have a book about the size of Catcher in the Rye. And so you're just supposed to sit down and write, don't edit, don't anything, just go through your story. So I did that. And of course, it's easy because you're writing your life, and you know what happened. And so I did that. And then every once in a while, I go back and revisit it. And I think about all the biographies that I have read. I just love biographies, particularly showbiz biographies that, how did you, then I did this and then I did this and this was horrible and this was great. And so I don't know. I may get back to it. I may not.
Any showbiz biography that you recommend?
Oh, so many. Viola Davis is just amazing. Will Smith's biography is amazing. Matthew McConaughey's is amazing. Gina Davis is awesome. They're just all so interesting, and everybody's journey is different. And you would never, and I think particularly Matthew McConaughey and Will Smith, although sometimes you have to just put it down because they're so full of themselves. But they are both so entertaining and they're both so creative about their business and about moving forward and their plans for their business, plus the backgrounds in their families, which really are the things that reveal who we are and how we came to be, and usually what we have to sell, because we are really what we have going for us is our own energy. Everybody has different energies, and they're buying people for that thing that you have when you walk in the room before you even talk, because it's what you bring in. I mean, Ma Kent was just perfect casting for me. It was just, I've done a lot of stuff and I've been good in it and it's been great. But Ma Kent, and I'm trying to think of the other thing, my favorite thing that I was so grateful for. Right now, I can't remember the others. Oh, I know the play Steel Magnolias. I played Malin in that play, and that's a part that was kind of written for me. It had my sensibilities and stuff to bring to it. So anyway, in fact, I have as much fabric in my sewing room that I could make Superman's costume just like Ma Kent did.
My mom I was like, Ma, you got to do this. Ma Kent on TV did this. I need you to make me a Superman costume too.
Well, what's interesting is in the pilot, we didn't get to shoot it because we ran out of money and it started raining. But in the original script, Ma Kent is discovered welding. You just see this person welding with the cap down, welding, and then she takes the cap up and it's Ma Kent. And I learned to weld for that. Not knowing what I later found out about how dangerous welding is. It's a really dangerous thing. But I was disappointed that we didn't get to do that because I thought that was such a great reveal. You know, you think you're seeing Pa Kent or whatever.
Yeah, that fits with her character too. I love that.
Yeah.
So we got some more questions in the chat here. So Hannah asks, do you prefer being in front of the camera, or are you interested in calling the shots from behind the camera and telling people what to do? And you find those roles similar or different?
Well, I do like telling people what to do in general. But I used to teach school and write and direct and produce plays. I haven't really, done any directing that would have anything to do with the business. And so I like being in front of the camera. I like being on the set. I think one of the most, you'll hear actors all the time when they're talking about a particular show that they did or whatever, you create such a family when you're working on a show. And I think that's one of the real lures for it. We all, and I think everybody's business work, they make a family, like a work family and then their regular family. And a lot of people spend more time with their work family than they do with their regular. So anyway, I really enjoy being on set and being with the other actors, and particularly when you have a group that just all really works together. I used to watch Everybody Loves Raymond, and it just looked like such a wonderful thing to have been part of that cast. They just were so, every single cylinder fired, on that show.
Yeah. Another question here in the chat. This is the episode of All in the Family you guest starred in was rumored that it almost wasn't going to air. Were you aware of that? Do you know the story and how that happened?
I do know about that. For those who don't know about that episode, a very famous episode called Cousin Liz. And this was at the time in history, must have been about 79 or 78, something like that, that Anita Bryant, who was a big orange juice spokesman, but she had a whole campaign against gay school teachers, that there should not be any gay school teachers. And so this episode was about about Edith's cousin Liz, who had died, and she was an old maid school teacher. And when they go to the whole first act is Edith and Archie talking about cousin Liz and how Archie always thought she was kind of cute and so on. And then Archie is talking about, did she have any money? Can we get anything? And Edith says, oh no, we just had this sterling silver teapot. And so then Archie is making plans, and he said he's going to get the tea service and he's going to sell it, and they're going to get a trip to California. So that whole first act sets up cousin Liz and how she's Edith's cousin and so forth, and they've always known her. And then the second act is at the wake, and you see people, having, coffee and talking and milling about. And I see Archie and Edith over by the tea service, and I can see Archie fingering it, and I know what he's thinking about. So I asked cousin Liz I asked Edith if I can speak to her. So we go into the bedroom, and she says, "Oh, this is so pretty. Was this Liz's bedroom?" And I say, "Well, it was our room." And she's like, "Oh." So anyway, I say, I heard you talking about the tea service, and I know it's been in your family for years, but I would get it back to you, at a certain period of time. But every day when we got in from school, we would have tea together and talk, and it just means so much. And so Edith says, "Oh, well, it's always been in our family." And I say, "Well, we were like family." And she's like, "Oh, that's nice." And it goes on for a while, and I say, I loved her. And then she says, "Yeah." And then she gets what it is. And so it goes forward. But so CBS didn't want to run it because it had a gay theme. And so Norman said, "Well, then you won't have any of my stuff. I'll just take everything off." And so CBS did run it. And they won an Emmy for that show, for the writing for that show.
Wow.
He did so many things like that. They did one on rape. They did shows on a lot of hot topics.
Yeah. It was, the show was ahead of its time. And I think that people don't even get that now. And I loved that show. That's a great show.
Well, what was great is that no matter which side you were on, whether you were a conservative or a liberal, you thought it was your show, because Meathead and Archie was conservative. And then they got to have all those debates and bring up all those different points of view. It was genius.
Yeah. And one more in the chat here. Kristen is asking if you have any stories about working with a young Alec Baldwin.
That's so interesting, Kristen, that you even know I worked with a young Alec. That show was so short-lived. I don't even know, did we do 13? I don't know. It was called Cutter to Houston. And it was Alec's first nighttime show. And the only thing I really remember about it is the audition for the last callback. All the people who were, being considered were taken into this big office building, and we're all sitting in the hall in chairs, waiting for our turn to go in. And I just remember Alex going in and Alec coming out, and he threw himself to the floor and was like, "Oh my God, it was so horrible. That was just so horrible." And then of course he got it, but that's kind of what his personality is like. And then I worked with Stephen Baldwin, his brother, in a couple of things, in a couple of films. In a film and then a miniseries.
Got the whole family. Another thing that you've done that jumps out to me is your role in Knives Out. I love those movies. I think Rian Johnson is an incredible filmmaker. And how did that come up, and what was shooting that role like? It's almost 100% different than Martha Kent, but also really effective.
Well, it was great. It was interesting. I don't know whether you know this, but actors say if you really want to know how to get a part in something, just buy a non-refundable airline ticket, and then you'll get a chance to do something. So my daughter and I were on vacation. We had just flown from LA to New York and from New York to Rome, and then we were going to go from Rome to Palermo. And when I got to Rome, there was this email saying, "Hi, I'm Rian Johnson's producer, confidential, for your eyes only." And there was the script. And I wrote back and I said, "Well, I'm in Rome." That just means they'll go, "Oh, whoops, next." But anyway, it worked out, and they brought me back, and I got to go to Boston and work with all those fabulous people. And I had the best time, of course. And Ryan is a wonderful person to work with, and I'm very grateful for him choosing me for that.
And Chris Evans, a Boston hometown hero for us here.
Yes. Are you in Boston?
Yeah, I'm in Boston. Yep.
I was in the Boston area all this summer working on a new streamer for Apple.
Oh, do we know about this? I don't think I've seen this. That's very exciting. Are you allowed to give? Okay, no more. I don't know. I didn't hear that.
I can say this. I worked on an Apple streamer, and it will be probably streaming in April.
April. All right. I will keep my eyes open. I don't know. People in Boston love things set in Boston. We love it. We love seeing our city on the screen, and it happens pretty regularly. There's lots of movies set in Boston, lots of things set in Boston, but we go crazy, and so that's very exciting.
I love being in that area. I was in that area for Knives Out. We stayed downtown in Boston. But when I was there this summer, I was in, how can I not remember where I was, because I was there so much. But anyway, I was in Concord and all those places out there. And I'd never really been there. And I got to explore it, and I went to Salem. And I wish I'd had, the thing was that the way the show was shooting, you were kind of never off when anybody else was off. And so places I'd like to have gone to explore, I did go a few places. I went to the Louisa May Alcott house, which was fabulous. That was such
a must visit.
But there were places I would have driven to that I didn't want to go by myself. But if there'd been somebody else and I had a lot of days off, I would have gone. But hopefully it'll get picked up and I'll be there next summer.
Do another season. Come visit us in Boston. That would be great.
Yeah. Be sure we'll exchange phone numbers.
Amazing. So it says you've been quoted as saying acting is like a great adventure. Do you have any adventurous tales from behind the scenes?
Ooh, adventurous tales from behind the scenes. I'm sure I do. Can I come up with them in the moment? But I would say in general about a great adventure. First of all, to live in any freelance career where you never know, will I ever work again? You know, because that's what it's like. That's an adventure, starting an adventure. And to this day, you know, I don't make commitments in the future unless it's for a job, because somebody could call you at any moment, which is just what happened when
you could show up and you'd be in Rome and
exactly, you know, so and that's what keeps us going because it's a very, very hard business. It's a very hard business and you don't know. And sometimes you will just go a long time, years without working, you know, and without even any encouragement of working. And of course, with COVID, I had booked a movie that was supposed to happen during COVID, and then, you know, that just went away. And then something else just went away because of that. And then the whole business, you know, just kind of came in on itself and was smaller because of COVID. And then we've had the strikes and we've had everything else. And also there is so much filming abroad, you know, and so that's a dearth of work here in the United States for actors. I will say, by the way, when I was in Boston this summer, there's a lot of filming around Boston. You must know that. This wonderful studio, what's it called? New England Studio, where we shot. I can't remember, but I remember that our crew was going straight into a movie, you know, the day we were wrapping. And so I'm happy that there's so much work there. And there's now more work here in Los Angeles too. Things are beginning to pick up. So we're very happy about that. But we're back to the adventure, which was the story. I don't know that I can think of what somebody would think of as an adventure until we're finished. And then I'll be here by myself and I'll go, oh my God, that was what I talking about. That was so great. So I can't think of anything else. But I just think that the life of an artist is very up and down, and it's a adventure, and you have to have really. I'm so lucky. I kind of was born with a positive attitude toward things. I had a sister who did not have that positive attitude, but I mean, I think she came without one. You know, I don't think it was necessarily that much that happened. My brother also had a good outlook on life. And so I always think that things are going to turn out right. They don't always, but I managed to make it all right in my brain. And that's what you have to be able to do to withstand the business.
Yeah. So you've done a lot of guest starring work, and we have Kristen's also asking about what were your experience like guesting on Quantum Leap?
Kristen Marie, you know everything I did. I mean,
she does. She's a pro. You should see her at the Superman celebration. She knows everything.
Well, she knows, and all the kind of science fiction-y things, which I never thought of Quantum Leap as being, but of course it was.
Yeah.
One of the things I will say about Quantum Leap, and then I'll try to remember when we shot it, is that one day, you know, 20 years past Quantum Leap, I was at the theater one night and someone came up and addressed me as my name in Quantum Leap, which was amazing. And shockingly, I actually knew what they were talking about. But shooting it, I remember we shot it over at Universal. Here's what I remember about it. It's not the best thing you can remember about something, but I went to work, and you know, you go to work and you take off your clothes and you go on the set, and then you come back and you put on your clothes and go home. And so I try never to take anything valuable with me when I go on set, because who knows? And as I was getting dressed, I realized I had on what turned out to be a very expensive watch. It wasn't a watch that I cared that much about, but I knew it was an expensive watch. And so I buried it deep in my clothes. You know, my clothes were hanging up and I put them in a pocket. I came back, it was gone.
Oh
So
no.
that's my souvenir from Quantum Leap.
Reverse souvenir.
Right.
And you've been on Star Trek too. You've done a lot of
Yes,
the
Star Trek I
kind of
got to
genre
do
show.
while I was doing Lois and Clark. And you know, they did a whole prosthesis, so you have to go ahead of time and, you know, have your face packed in clay and do that. And then, you know, you would come if your call was normally going to be at 6, you'd get there like at 4 because they had to put on all that. And then they'd build another hour at the end of the day to take it off. And so the first 2 or 3 days, I just thought that was so much fun. It was so exciting. And then I thought, oh my God, I would hate to be on this show every day. So, you know, and Rene Auberjonois, every day he would start about 4 o'clock reaching under, trying to loosen his face, you know, and I really, for the first time, really understood about people making a whole lot of money for doing those shows because you don't have a life during the time you're doing that. You know, you're there at 6 in the morning and you're there till way after sundown. There's no other life during that time. And so
Especially when there were 22
the things
episodes
you
a
wish
season
for.
too.
Yeah. I have had, you know, I've had just about the right kind of success. You know, I've gotten to work, I've made a living in the business, I've had good parts, I've met interesting people. People recognize me just enough, you know, so I'm not, I mean, Rue McClanahan was a friend of mine, and we went on, I went as her plus one on on the Love Boat cruise once. We were just actors, but, you know, they did PR and stuff. And it's like she could never walk on the, you know, around the ship because people were just always all over her. When everybody was at dinner, she'd be out walking around. And I thought I wouldn't like that at all. You know, I really I like people recognizing me and I can interact with people, but then I have my life. And but Rue is fine about it. She's perfectly good.
It suited her.
Yeah. And so I think we get what we're supposed to have.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. You're able to go to the grocery store and but still.
Yeah, I would hate not being able to go to the grocery store. I think about it sometimes about what it would be like because, yeah, I was just listening to Charlie Sheen's new book, which was very interesting about his journey and about how people recognize him. And, you know, and it's like Rue, we were going someplace once on the road and we were buying gas and I went in to pay for it and she was pumping the gas so that, you know, people wouldn't see her. And I came out and people had recognized her and they were all surrounding her. You know, they were just all up in her face saying, you thought you were going to fool us, but we saw you. And I thought, I wouldn't like that at all.
Yeah, it sounds crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So some more questions we got in the chat. Your dream cameo scenario, you know, is there a show you'd love to do a cameo on or a kind of character you'd like to play in a cameo on a television show?
Oh, anyone, just name one.
Yeah.
Shows that would be fun. I mean, but there's no, like, for instance, the morning show, which I just love with Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer
Yep.
Aniston. I'd love to be on that. There's no place on any future show for me. I don't match, you know, the kind of stories they tell and the people. There's just not a part for me. And there are some shows that you think, oh, I'd love to be on. But if you just look at how they cast what kind of extra stories they bring in. First of all, their stories are kind of already with the people who are there, you know, as the bear and things like that. So I don't know. I find that the universe does a better job for me than I can of providing me with what's coming up next. Like I had no idea. I mean, Knives Out just came from nowhere, it seemed to me. And then this thing that I did, well, these are not coming from nowhere because really Knives Out kind of put me in the system again. I hadn't really worked for a while. And then once people start seeing you, then they think, and the other thing is, I don't know whether you're aware of this, but when I say this, you'll go, yes, that's right. There are just going to be times in an actor's life when they're not going to work because, for instance, I started out when I got to New York doing commercials. And I was a young mother and I looked like a young mother, and I was the young mother of 7 and 8 and 9-year-olds, and I did a lot of commercials like that. And then I went through a time when I looked too old for the young kids, and I was old enough, but I didn't look old enough for the teenagers. And so you didn't say that's a teenager's mom. So we passed through different places of where we look like whatever it is. And so people have got to be able to go, oh, you're that one, or oh, you're that one. And if you're in the middle, if you're a star, you can be in the middle because they just want you because you're a star, and then they'll write something, that goes for you. But so, we pass in and out of what I would call marketable seasons in our lives, that we are officially look this age for this food group. And then over here, it's like, and you have to pass all the way over here, so.
Yeah.
So that really tells the story. And I can't, the morning show, yes, the bear, there's so many things. A shrink, what is it called?
Shrinking, yeah. Also on Apple TV.
Shrinking. But I don't. You can look at things. I think procedurals, crime shows, and hospital shows, they have more of a revolving door of guest actors who come on because they're going to be the crooks of that particular story. Because they need a story every week.
Yes. The Superman franchise has done a really good job with bringing back actors from different iterations. I'd love to see in these new DCU movies that they're doing now.
I keep thinking I should have been on one of the other Superman shows. They've had other people from it, and it's like, hello, I would do it. But
Dean and Terry were both on Smallville. We'd love to have you in.
Yeah, I'd love to be on Smallville. You know what I'd love to do? It's unlikely it would ever happen. It's probably one of those things where it says, be careful what you wish for, because who knows what it's really like shooting them. But I mean, I think it would be really fun to be on one of the, DC, the Marvel, or one of those kind of shows, that would, but who knows what it's really like. You could be there. I mean, for instance, I used to fantasize of being on the White Lotus, when the first season of White Lotus, which was shot during COVID, and those people all went to that fabulous hotel, which was closed except for them. They were in that hotel being, having wonderful food and being there and working at Texas. Like, yes, I want to be able. And so then, I've watched every season. I go, yes. But then last season I watched. And last season, did you watch it last season?
I did not, no.
I'm trying to remember where they were. They were in some really hot, humid place. But I'm watching it and I'm thinking this would be great. And then they shot for 7 months. 7 months. And if I had been, and I don't care how great the hotel was, if I'd been in this hot, humid place for 7 months, it would have been horrible. I am so cranky when it's hot and humid. I'm no fun at all. And so it's like, you have to be careful what you wish for and research carefully before you put that in there.
Before you say, yes, I'll do that.
Right.
Kristen, more great questions from Kristen. She wants to know what it was like playing Michelle Pfeiffer's mother.
Oh, that was great too. I got to work for Gary Marshall, who was just the most fabulous person in the world. And I think I only did 1 or 2 days on that, but it was very exciting to be part of that film. I had seen that play on Broadway, and it was great to work with Michelle. And she's the only one, that I interacted with since I played her mom.
Is there something that you've done, that you've worked on, that you feel like hasn't gotten the attention that it deserves?
Oh, if so, I can't remember right now. If you say, what movie did you see last night? I'm like, I see so many things and I've done so many things. Well, yeah, okay, I'll say this. I did a film a couple of years ago, and actually it's streaming right now. And it's called So, like you sew a dress, So Torn.
Yeah.
And it's an independent, so it hasn't had as much hullabaloo as it would have. But it's such a fun thing, and it's streaming on Apple and on Amazon and on YouTube for only $4 on YouTube, I think. But it's called So Torn, and it's a quirky thriller. And it also, speaking of superheroes, it's called So Torn, SEW, because her secret power is thread.
All
And
right.
you should take a look at it. It's really fun.
I most certainly will. Is there something in your career where you look back and you feel like I absolutely nailed that? I was awesome in this. Something you want to give yourself a pat on the back for? Toot your own horn, if you will.
Oh, I can't think of anything. I mean, I think there are, I think, how I say this? You know, when you look back on a part, um, it's impossible to separate it from the experience of doing it and the people you got to play with. And so I don't think I'd single anything out like that, but I will single out something that I did that was very exciting to me. Was when I was very young in my career. I went to New York. I was already old when I went to New York because I had already had 3 kids and I had gotten divorced and I was going to like, this is what I was going to do before I got married. So I went to New York and I took my kids and I kind of started all over, but I was 32, which is really old to be starting over. And I was really green. I mean, I had done stuff, but everybody else in New York who was my competition, who was 32, had been there for like 10 years, you know, and learned a lot of stuff that I didn't know. But I got very lucky and I was in a film, an independent film that I just shot. And I had like the amount of content I had in it was like 2 60-second commercials. And I couldn't imagine anything was going to happen with it. And that was a film with Peter Boyle called Joe. And it made Peter a star and it put me in the system. And so I began to get more work. And then I got a film called A Touch of Class with Linda Jackson and George Segal. And I got to go to Spain. It was so exciting to go work in Spain and work with those people. And so, you know, there's different things that I can look at different points of my career and different points of my life and what it was like for me. And that's really what I look back on. I could say, oh, well, maybe there was something that I did that I thought I didn't do very well, but it was like, I can't think of that either. I look back on things now that I say, oh my God, I was so green in that. What was it? I was on some panel for Remington Steel. And so I said, I can't even remember what I did. Do you have a link for it? And they sent me the link and I looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, I was so green.
That's an important part of growing up is looking back and cringing at your old self. Yeah.
Yeah,
How
like
you've
your high school
progressed as
yearbook
an
and your
artist.
hairdo, right?
Believe me, you would be very surprised to see my high school. Kristen is all asking some more. She just wants to know if you and George Clooney were the only people to appear on both ER shows. I don't know.
Oh no, I'm sure there were others, but it's interesting she brings up ER because I went up for ER a million times. Well, anyway, 3 or 4 before I finally got it. It was the last episode of ER that I was in, and George Clooney was long gone. Um,
Yeah.
so I think, although they do have a policy, most shows have a policy that if you've been on it once, you can't be on it again. But I think not NCIS, but CIS, one of those, there's one procedural that you can be on it again, and I was on it again. And on NCIS, I was on twice as 2 different people. And so that's unusual. But I don't know, but I sure am sorry I missed George Clooney. But what I will say is the guy who had taken George Clooney's part, you know, whoever he was, I think he was some Australian actor. And so my part, I was like on the, you know, on the table for the entire time, whatever it was. And whoever it was who was that doctor, was playing that doctor, he came over just to chat, you know, in between scenes. And I was like, oh my God, he had charisma. I was like, I'm sure George would have been the same way. George,
Probably.
George and I did a lot of work on at Norman Lear's Embassy Studios, and he did what was that thing that somebody who's listening is going to know? He played the whole thing with the girls with who was the New York actress who was the den mother for that. But anyway, he was over there working on that before he hit it big. And I was lucky enough to do a lot of shows, over at Norman Lear's house, when I first got here.
Great. Wow. Well, thank you so much for your time. We, we're trying to raise charity here for the Otherworldly Fundraising is working.
And congratulations
for the
on that.
con.
That's awesome that you're doing that.
Thank
Sounds
you all.
good.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Yep.
Otherworldly Fundraising is a group of friends who decided to use our nerdy talents to help others. Our charity this year is Options Save Lives, which helps individuals fully recover from alcohol use disorder. Thank you for joining us this weekend and for donating to this worthy charity.